Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we are going to totally break down why the 1949 John Ford classic, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, remains an absolute cinematic triumph. Seriously, whether you are a lifelong diehard fan of Westerns or you've literally never seen a single frame of this film, we're going to see exactly why this movie has held its ground as a masterpiece for over 75 years. It's not just a stunning visual achievement, it's this deeply moving story about duty, sacrifice, and the relentless passage of time.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Custer is dead, and around the bloody guidon of the immortal 7th Cavalry lie 212 officers and men. The Sioux and Cheyenne are on the warpath. Wow. I mean, that is the actual opening narration of the film, and talk about a perfect hook, right? Instantly, we're transported to this incredibly tense, very specific moment in American history. You're not just passively watching a story unfold, you are dropped dead center into a total powder keg.
So, moving into Section 1, the 1876 Frontier, a powder keg in the West. To really grasp the weight of this movie, we've got to understand the historical backdrop first. The setting here, it's basically a character all on its own. Picture it. It's the blistering summer of 1876. Back in June, General Custer and his 7th Cavalry were just wiped out at the Little Bighorn. And right on the heels of that, an unprecedented 10,000 native warriors. We're talking Kiowa, Comanche, Arapaho, Sioux, and Apache. They all unite for war. The entire frontier is teetering on the absolute brink of explosion. And against this massive, looming threat, our aging protagonist, Cavalry Captain Nathan Brittles, has exactly 6 days left before his mandatory retirement. 6 days! It's such a brilliant way to establish these incredibly high stakes and set up this intense ticking clock driving our hero. All right, Section 2. Ford and Wayne team up, creating the Cavalry Trilogy. Now that we know the dangerous world on screen, let's talk about the real-world titans behind the camera who actually built it. Legendary director John Ford and his iconic star John Wayne. You know, this film was actually the middle chapter in John Ford's famous Cavalry trilogy, sandwiched right between Fort Apache and Rio Grande. And making it, well, it was a huge financial gamble. With a massive production budget of $1.6 million, it was actually one of the most expensive Westerns ever attempted at that time. But man, Ford delivered. Not only did he bring the whole shebang in under budget, but the box office rentals alone raked in $2.7 million for RKO. So despite the massive risk, Ford delivered an absolute blockbuster that proved his grand vision was, without a doubt, a total hit. Now, what is really fascinating here is the number 42. John Wayne was only 42 years old when he shot this. Let that sink in. Yet he was cast to play Captain Nathan Brittles, this heavily weathered veteran who was a full generation older than Wayne actually was. So relying on some pretty heavy Hollywood makeup, Wayne completely transformed into this graying, soon-to-be retired officer. And it actually forced him to step way out of his typical, macho action hero mold. Instead, he delivers this deeply vulnerable, quiet, reflective performance. Honestly, a lot of film buffs argue it's one of the most memorable of his entire career. Moving on to Section 3. One final cavalry mission: duty, honor, and romance. As we just mentioned, Wayne's character, Captain Brittles, is literally counting down his final 6 days in uniform. But of course, before he can just ride off into the sunset, he gets handed one last, very perilous mission. So the fort is facing this very real threat of a massive uprising, right? And Brittles gets tasked with this insanely dangerous escort mission. He has to safely transport the commanding officer's wife, Abby Olshard, who, by the way, is affectionately nicknamed Old Iron Pants, along with her niece, Olivia Dandridge, completely out of the danger zone to an eastbound stagecoach. Just think about the sheer tension here. He's traversing totally hostile territory, right on the precipice of war, saddled with protecting civilians, all while internally wrestling with the fact that he's about to leave the only life he's ever known. It's intense. And right smack in the middle of this high-stakes mission, we get the very element that gives this film its name. See, back then, a yellow ribbon was a traditional sign worn by a woman to tell the world, hey, I have a sweetheart serving in the cavalry. Well, the commanding officer's niece, Olivia Dandridge, decides to wear one of these ribbons in her hair. But there's a huge catch. She absolutely point-blank refuses to reveal exactly who that ribbon is for. Because Olivia plays so hard to get and won't name her sweetheart, it kicks off this incredibly fierce romantic rivalry right within Brittles' own ranks. You got these two young lieutenants, Flint Cohell and Ross Pennell, and they start openly and aggressively competing for her affection. It is great. This romantic subplot just beautifully complicates Brittles' desperate final mission. It's like you have the external powder keg of 10,000 warriors outside the camp, paired with the internal friction of two hot-headed lieutenants squabbling over a yellow ribbon inside the camp. So what does this all mean? We've got a fantastic historical setting, sky-high stakes, and some juicy romantic tension. But why exactly is She Wore a Yellow Ribbon considered a timeless masterpiece? Lots of films have great plots, right? So what elevates this one into the realm of true cinematic legend? Well, to answer that, we need to pivot our explainer away from the narrative plot and look at the sheer behind-the-scenes artistry. Which brings us to Section 4, Artistry of a Masterpiece, Painting the West. Let's take a look at the jaw-dropping visual and acting choices that elevate this film way, way above your standard Western fare. This is where John Ford truly flexes his genius. You see, Ford was absolutely obsessed with authenticity. He and his team literally pored over paintings by the famous Western artist Frederick Remington. Ford wanted to meticulously recreate the feeling of Remington's art right there on the screen. And the way he did it? By shooting his beloved Monument Valley in glorious Technicolor for the very first time. His cinematographer, Wynton C. Hodge, managed to capture these breathtaking images that critics to this day describe as making this one of the most visually stunning Westerns ever put on film. And this next story brilliantly illustrates exactly the kind of wild production this was. So they're filming this line of soldiers on horseback, and a very real, very dramatic desert storm suddenly kicks up right over Monument Valley. Wynton C. Hork, the cinematographer, was so worried about the lack of light that he actually filed a formal written protest on set, like, we can't shoot in this. But John Ford? He couldn't care less. He saw those dramatic looming clouds and basically said, keep the cameras rolling. And you know what happened? On Academy Award night, Hork was the only person from the entire film to walk away with an Oscar, winning for that exact stunning cinematography. Ford just totally understood the power of capturing the raw, untamed emotion of that landscape. But hey, the artistry wasn't just confined to those sweeping, epic landscape shots. It was baked right into the intimate acting choices, too. Take this scene. Captain Brittles is presented with a retirement watch by his men. Instead of doing the typical tough guy's stoic acceptance, Wayne's character pulls out a pair of bifocals and comically fumbles with them just to read the inscription. Years later, Wayne actually talked about how Ford insisted on adding these small, incredibly human touches. It seems like a tiny detail, but it takes this legendary cavalry captain and makes him so deeply human, so vulnerable, and just incredibly sympathetic. All right, Section 5, Legacy and Where to Watch. The Duke is Waiting. Let's bring this explainer right back into the present day to talk about the film's enduring reputation, and more importantly, give you some actionable next steps so you can experience it for yourself.
The critical consensus today totally validates everything we've been talking about. Honestly, critics and fans still revere this movie over 75 years later. Just look at the numbers. It boasts a massive 91% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. IMDb ranks it as the 26th greatest Western of all time. The Center of the West puts it at 17th, and Studio Binder ranks it 32nd. Now, sure, some modern critics will correctly point out that it presents a fairly idealized or romanticized version of the Old West, but across the board, its striking imagery and its deep emotional resonance, completely undeniable.
And honestly, the best news? You don't have to hunt down some rare out-of-print DVD to watch it. It is so accessible today. You can stream it right now, completely for free with ads on platforms like Plex, Vimeo, Fawesome, and Mometu. Whether you're a film student wanting to study that legendary Oscar-winning cinematography, or you just want to see John Wayne in one of his absolute finest, most understated roles, it is literally right there at your fingertips. So grab a giant bowl of popcorn and experience a true masterpiece of American cinema. John Wayne once admitted he felt he never quite got the credit he deserved for this specific performance, but time has been incredibly kind to Captain Nathan Brittles. As you settle in to watch it, I want you to ask yourself, is there greater courage in bravely facing down a massive, charging enemy, or in having the quiet, heartbreaking dignity to gracefully let go of the only life you've ever known? I highly recommend you find out. The Duke is waiting. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and happy watching.